Hi, Mark, and today on Outside Views, I have to talk about Boris Johnson again. Yeah. But not only the consequence of Brexit, but also the scandal surrounding Boris Johnson will keep us busy for a while here on this channel. It's an open secret that in London, even important agreements within the government are settled via WhatsApp. And now it's about news from ex-Prime Minister Johnson from the time of the coronavirus. In the dispute over WhatsApp messages from former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, a showdown between Parliament's Corona Inquiry Committee and the government was averted on Tuesday. The committee calls for all of the ex-Prime Minister's WhatsApp correspondence with government officials from the Corona period and calendar entries in uncensored form. The central government agency, the Cabinet Office, has so far rejected this. According to them, the content of the messages is largely irrelevant to the committee tasked with investigating the government's actions during the pandemic. Committee Chair Lady Heather Hallett, a retired justice who sits in the House of Lords, sees things differently, though. A deadline, she said, which was supposed to expire at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, was initially extended to Thursday. If the government doesn't hand over the messages by then, that means today, Hallett is threatening criminal prosecution. The Corona Committee of Inquiry is to work through the hesitant and sometimes chaotic handling of the British government in the pandemic. According to death certificates, around 227,000 people died of COVID-19 in the United Kingdom. That's significantly more than here in Germany. It has been an open secret for a long time that in London itself, important agreements within the government are made via WhatsApp, as I said, and content from more than 100,000 WhatsApp messages from former Health Minister Matt Hancock only became public in March and had left the ex-minister in need of explanation. A journalist who worked as a ghostwriter for Hancock had forwarded the news to the Daily Telegraph newspaper. The correspondence requested by the committee also includes Johnson's exchanges with current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who was Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister at the time. And it has long been known that the disgraced British ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not so particular about the truth. For most Britons, especially after the Partygate scandal surrounding celebrations in Downing Street during lockdowns in 2020, one thing is certain: he is a liar. And so it is hardly surprising that although he wants to publish his memoirs about his tenure, his official COVID diaries are to remain under lock and key. Among other things, 24 A4 notepads are the center of a unique tug-of-war between the Conservative government and a parliamentary committee of inquiry. Another one. Johnson had filled the notebooks in the 2 years from January 1st, 2020, after the first COVID cases emerged in Wuhan in China. The investigators want to learn more about how the Tory government at the time was dealing with the corona pandemic. And that's why the former Prime Minister's notebooks should have been handed over to the agency, along with calendars and the earlier mentioned WhatsApp messages and emails, according to investigators. The Conservative government, however, vehemently refuses to do so. And finally, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak could also face trouble. He had probably also corresponded with Johnson, then still in his role as Treasury Secretary. The deadline has been pushed back to today, as I said, to Thursday, and a lawsuit is imminent. The fact that the content of Johnson's calendar could be problematic was confirmed a few days ago after an investigating government agency forwarded several indications of previously unknown violations of the corona rules in force at the time, and they forwarded them to the police. Accordingly, friends and relatives are said to have visited the ex-Prime Minister between June 2020 and May 2021 at the Czech's country estate. He had dismissed the allegations as bizarre. It would be another politically motivated intrigue. Well, this Partygate affair began in autumn 2021. British media published numerous reports on celebrations in Downing Street and other government agencies during the pandemic. There was a wine fridge, and staff encouraged everyone to bring their own booze to meetings. Although Johnson was not present at most of these celebrations, he is said to have known about them. He was also fined for attending a birthday party hosted for him in June 2020. The revelations caused an uproar among the public, and after all, Britons had made great sacrifices, for example, by not being able to say goodbye to dying relatives and friends due to the strict rules during lockdown. Johnson, who overwhelmingly won the 2019 election, slipped in the polls, dragging the Conservative Party down with him. And he was finally overthrown in July 2021. He defended himself at a parliamentary hearing in March against allegations that he had deliberately lied in December 21. He claimed that Downing Street celebrations and gatherings in 2020 did not break any lockdown rules in place at the time. Many Britons also followed the hearing at the time with the hope of justice. The committee plans to announce its decision in the coming days. In the worst case, he faces a suspension which could result in him losing his parliamentary seat. British journalist Trevor Kavanagh emphasized in the daily newspaper The Sun that Johnson's return to Downing Street is now unthinkable. He's done for, were the words there. The term Partygate refers to a scandal involving Boris Johnson allegations of COVID-19 lockdown violations by the Conservative Party during the pandemic. The scandal came to light, as I said, in November 21, but it primarily revolved around events and actions that occurred in 2020 and early 2021. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the UK government implemented various lockdown measures to curb the spread of the virus. These measures included restrictions on social gatherings, travel, and the closure of non-essential business. However, it was alleged that in May 2020, when the country was under lockdown, a gathering took place at 10 Downing Street, and that was the Prime Minister's official residence, for the celebration of Dominic Cummings' birthday as well. And several senior staff members and politicians were reported to have attended and potentially violating lockdown rules. Further allegations emerged regarding parties held in Downing Street during the Christmas period in 2020, when the rest of the country was subject to strict restrictions on socializing. These alleged parties were said to have taken place while the public was advised against such gatherings and were seen as particularly controversial. The scandal gained significant attention and criticism due to the perceived hypocrisy of the government's actions, as they were enforcing strict lockdown measures on the general public while allegedly flouting those same rules themselves. The revelations led to public outrage and calls for accountability. In response, the government initially denied any wrongdoing, with Boris Johnson stating that he was unaware of any parties being held. However, as more evidence emerged, including leaked videos and testimonies from former staff members, the pressure on Johnson and his government increased. An independent investigation known as the Sue Gray inquiry was launched to examine the allegations and to determine if any COVID-19 regulations were breached. The investigation aimed to establish whether any formal gatherings or parties had taken place at 10 Downing Street and if the government knowingly misled the public about these events. And in conclusion, Boris Johnson was the first active Prime Minister to be fined by the police for breaking the law. And as I said earlier, you really can say without a doubt that Boris Johnson is a liar. And I watched all those PMQs at the time, and yes, he lied to Parliament. They have to officially do that with an inquiry and whatever, but everybody with a sound mind knows Boris Johnson lied to Parliament. And we will see if that will also be the official result. If not, I will lose the last shred of faith in this Parliament. I'm sorry. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.